Welcome to FitBody Lifestyle, the show where we dive deep into the world of fitness, health, business, relationships, and the art of living a balanced life. I'm Jami.
And I'm Greg, and we're here to give you the benefit of our experiences in the fitness and bodybuilding industry, the corporate world, running a business, personal development, and building healthy relationships.
Whether you're sweating it out in the gym, hustling in your business, or seeking balance in your everyday life, you're in the right place.
So lace up those sneakers and grab that water bottle, and let's get ready to transform our minds, our bodies, and our lives. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of FitBody Lifestyle. Sorry, we're talking off camera, and it's just funny. And we like to be real, so this is real. We are very privileged and honored to have one of our most favorite people on the planet here, Miss Nicole Desmond. And Nicole, do you want to say hi first?
Yeah, hello. My name is Nicole. I'm a Fitbody Fusion Coach, and I'm excited to be here.
We are so excited to have you. And, we start all of these conversations with check-in words. So what you were saying before we start was freaking you out because you didn't want to give us. So just whatever you're feeling in the moment. What's your check-in word?
I'm a little nervous.
Okay. I like that.
But excited.
I like that. We'll go with both of those.
Yeah.
Those are great words. Okay. Let's start this conversation by introducing you, which you said your name, but tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm 31 years old. I'm originally from Chicago, and I currently live in Denver, which I love because I like to call myself an adventurer. So my little bio that I have on my Instagram is Adventurer Bodybuilder Coach. So it's a huge part of how I identify myself, and that means a lot of different things to me. So I love to travel. I love to get outdoors and hike and camp and backpack and ski and all the things. I'm a dog mom. I'm a partner. I'm a friend, a sister. I also work a full-time job on top of coaching. So I have a very full life, and I'm very blessed.
And a challenging full-time job, I would add.
Yes, a very challenging full-time job. I'm a project manager and sales consultant. So it's it's a good time, but also challenging. And we were talking about it earlier, a little frustrating at times.
It is. Well, corporate life is that way. It kind of goes hand in hand.
Keeps life interesting.
Yeah, it does.
As I'm sitting here looking at you, I cannot help but go back to my first memory of you, which is at that, I think it was a little Italian restaurant or something out in Pittsburgh, right
North
outside
Americans.
right outside of there where we first met you, and I think we sat down and broke bread with you and your mom.
My mom was with me, yes.
Yeah. And the relationship was, I think Jesse Palmer was coaching you at the time.
Correct. Yeah.
And it was just, we fell in love with you immediately, and that's just continued to deepen. So thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
And I think the topic that we're going to talk about.
You might think the topic may morph into another topic.
Well, when I saw people, I don't think, they're probably like, he don't think. So
I know.
The topic that we're going to talk about today is staying authentic within the industry.
Yeah.
And so I think we can expand that topic into not just the bodybuilding industry, but your career and your relationship, and authenticity is something that kind of traverses all of those different universes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge word for me. It's the way I like to live my life. And I know that in rapport, we have to write a personal statement, purpose statement, and whatnot. And a lot of what I found or find my purpose in is living super authentically in such a way that inspires others to be able to do the same. And that means a lot of different things for me and for other people, but authenticity is really huge for me. So I'm excited to talk about this.
Yeah, it's absolutely one of my core values as well.
Yeah.
And I feel like if we're not showing up authentically in our lives, then we're not really building the kind of connections and relationships and things like we want to build. So I loved when you brought this up. I think that it's a topic that it just expands beyond the bodybuilding industry, but it is very much present, in what we do in this fitness world and this world of social media and all these other things. So I'm excited to explore it a little bit more with you.
Yeah, me too.
So I'm thinking let's start with the bodybuilding industry, okay?
Yeah.
Because that kind of is our niche, if you will, which is really, I think the corporate life and the relationship part is really interesting as well. But let's start with bodybuilding, and especially since that world, as Jami just talked about with social media and everything else, it's a comparison sport. It's so easy to get into that that concept or that construct of looking at what everybody else is doing, and in so doing, you lose touch with yourself and your own identity.
Yeah.
So how, I mean, talk about, let's start there. Talk about how you stay grounded, how you stay at that center point.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to 2017 when I found competing. I was in a not so good relationship. I didn't quite know what I wanted, who I was, and I started competing because I was working out at a gym and I had a lot of other girls there who were doing it, and I was doing the work. I was eating in a similar way, just putting the work in. They said, why not? You're already doing the work already. And then that boyfriend at the time also was competing. And so I kind of just jumped into it. And I think throughout competing, I really started to find this confidence in myself, which I talk a lot about with clients and things. It's keeping those promises to yourself and like standing in your own integrity and, making sure that what you're saying or promising to yourself that you're going to do, you follow through on that. And so I really started finding myself through the sport at the beginning. And then once I moved through that process and, kept competing throughout the years, I kind of flourished in a way. And I started doing all this like self-work and going to therapy. And a lot of what I learned about myself through all of those things is what really helps keep me grounded. And there's a lot of tools that I've picked up over the years and systems and habits that have compounded over the years to really help keep me that grounded. Journaling's a big thing for me. So I journal every single morning. Just making time for myself and making sure I don't sacrifice or put myself on the back burner when life gets busy. Those kinds of things, I think, really help keep me centered and grounded and have a good relationship with the sport in general.
I love that. I know that bodybuilding for me has had a similar effect in terms of just like helping me find myself. And it's really interesting how, the way we show up, we talk about this a lot. It's not just growth in terms of muscles.
No, yeah.
I mean, because this is an all-encompassing sport, we've got to eat in a certain way. We've got to, how we're doing time management is so crucial. And then, like you said, that making time for yourself. And, even, I know we've talked about even just stopping to breathe,
So important.
It sounds like so simple, and getting enough rest. I know, we talk a lot about a lot of these things. So it's really cool to hear you say like what a difference it's made in your life. And I think that it can go one way or the other, depending on how you handle it. So like going into therapy and doing things like that to work on yourself. I've always loved that about you, that you're constantly figuring out ways to learn and grow. And then I'm curious to know, like, how with your clients do you help them in some of these areas as well?
Yeah. So with my clients, a lot of times I get a lot of newer competitors or I get lifestyle clients who are trying to make a transformation. And I think it stems from with them trying to help them build those small habits and really just work on those like basics, if you will, like creating a routine for themselves that they can stick to, like creating a journaling or gratitude practice or a practice of checking in with themselves. I'm a big lover of walking in the morning. I think it's great. And not for exercise, just to get fresh air and get sunshine and just kind of ground myself in another way for the day. Whether that's with a client or with myself or with, anybody else in my life. So I think there's really small things that I like to work with them on to really build those habits over time, because I built a lot of the habits I have without really knowing what I was doing or putting into practice at the time. Like I've picked up things over the last 10 years where it's like, well, yeah, I get up every day just because I started to do that and I realized I felt good. And then all this, science comes out like getting up at the same time every day is really good for you. And it's like, oh, I'm already doing that. So they compounded over time. And now I'm trying to relay that experience to my clients and how that has positively impacted my life. And, what works for me might not always work for them, but a lot of times these things have a lot of, backing to them that can really benefit them in such a positive way. And they just, start to flourish because they're doing these smaller things that really make a big difference.
Well, that's a reminder for us because we stopped our walks in the morning.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we got to get back to that. Oh, the weather's been a little bit of a factor in that.
It has. Once it cools off here.
Rain or shine, I'm out there. It's snowing. And I'm like, we're going out there, dog. Like, I don't care.
See, there you go. No more excuses.
Hey, I'm ready to go. So anyway, moving on. Or are we moving on? I don't know. We're moving. A couple things that really come up to play is one, I don't think, I'd love you to explain your quest. Authenticity being such an interesting topic, and it's very interesting to me, especially in the corporate world, but also in bodybuilding and personally as well. And I think that, some of the conversations I've had with people about authenticity is that there's your authentic self, but then there's also the self that you want to be.
Yes.
And, since we talk about rapport, there's that whole concept of fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
And whenever I have mentored somebody or talked to them about, well, fake it till you make it, I usually get in reply, yeah, but that's not authentic. And I disagree, because I said, if that's who you really want to be, that's what resonates with you, then you can make it part of your authentic self. And I think of you in that journey, Nicole, as well, because I think your life is one, you're not just an external adventurer, you're an internal adventurer as well.
Very much.
What is the driving force for that desire, I guess, for lack of the passion around uncovering aspects of your personality to really, your authentic self is not a static thing. It's not just it's not a destination. It's an ongoing process for you, which I love. How do you tap into that? What drives that for you?
It's very deeply rooted intrinsically for me. I think what happened to me in the toxic relationship I was in leading up to 2017 was I fully lost myself in that. I almost lost my closest friends. I alienated family in a way. And coming out of that, I just remember thinking, like, I never want to lose myself again. I want to, one, know and understand who I am and why I am the way I am, which was a big driver for me. Just, why do I act this way? Why did I do that? Why did I choose this person? Why did I choose this person for so long when they weren't treating me in the way that I deserved? And so I really wanted to tap into myself and understand, patterns that I was displaying in that relationship. And then how do I get to be this person that I want to be, whether that's in a relationship, or I remember setting a goal for myself to really throw myself into female friendships. And now I have almost too many female friends to count that I can't even see all of them as much as I want to. But I remember just really feeling like I was drowning or floundering in a way, and all of this just questions in my head that I wanted to answer for myself so I could really learn to love myself. I think that was a big thing. I think I put up with a toxic relationship for so long because I didn't have a lot of self-love. And I think that also is fueled by wanting to show up authentically so that others can see me and love me and accept me for who I am. But I have to know who I am to show up that way for then others to then see that.
That's profound.
Yeah.
Is that the why? You talked a lot about the what.
Yeah.
Is the what's the why though?
I think about this quite frequently. My current partner, who's amazing, has asked me this since the beginning, what are your biggest needs? And a lot of people talk about the 5 love languages, but for me, it's always been to be seen, loved, heard, and celebrated and accepted for who I am. And I think that's a big driver for me to continuously evolve and figure out who I am, so then that person can then love that side of me.
Well, and I think you said the predicate to that, which is so you can love yourself.
Yes.
Because if you love yourself, it makes it easier for other people to love you.
Yes. Hopefully.
Well, if they don't, they're just not looking at what we're looking at.
Right, exactly.
Because you're easy to love. You're easy to love.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. Well, and that's what I, was thinking a lot as you were talking about is it is kind of that process of first finding out, who am I?
Right.
Who do I want to be? How do I start to become more of what I want to be? And then showing up as that person so that when people are loving you, they're loving you for your true self. So I know it's so easy to kind of I know for myself, even in relationships in the past is, it's easy to kind of become what that person might want you to show up as. And that's really hard to kind of stand in your own power, right?
It is really hard. I even struggled with this at the beginning of my current relationship because I'm very much so this is who I am, take it or leave it. And while there's a good side to that, there's also the side of well, I also need to grow and evolve and learn how to be in a good partnership. But really losing myself, in that previous relationship, I just really wanted to figure out who I am and like why I am the way I am. I think there's a lot of reasons that people are kind of latching onto like Enneagrams or the 5 love languages or, Myers-Briggs or all of these like identity things or even astrology. Because it's like, oh, this explains why I'm this way, or this gives me a reason about why I'm this way. People just want to understand more about themselves. And I think that's an easier way to do it, quote unquote. But I think the real like inner work comes from, I love therapy, big proponent of that. Journaling, just like being with your own thoughts, learning how to be alone, enjoying your own company. And I think people struggle with that. I have struggled with it in the past. I almost don't in the opposite, almost complete opposite direction now. But I just learning and continually evolving and asking myself, like, why am I this way? And I think it's an never ending process, actually. So.
Well, in building that support structure is the other thing you talked about, like those relationships outside of just that kind of primary love relationship, but the friendships and things like that. And would you say that the friendships that you've built, you hold them accountable, they hold you accountable? Is that part of that authenticity?
Yeah, I think it's a huge part of it. I have noticed that almost all of the relationships I've made in the last like 5 to 7 years as an adult are really awesome, genuine, inspiring women who are super like emotionally aware and just hold me accountable. And I'm able to do that the same way for them. And I'm able to confide in them and be super vulnerable with them in ways that I didn't really get to experience either in like childhood or whatever. Like I have a lot of childhood friends still that I'm still close with, but there's something very different and special about making friends as an adult that you really get to choose people as they are now. And they're just so much more, I think, here's the word again, authentic, because you get to really be yourself. And for someone to say, like, I see you and I see you for all that you are, whether that's good and bad, and I still love you anyways, and I'm here for you. I think that's really beautiful.
As we talk about bodybuilding, I think I was just thinking about the pushes and pulls that can take you away from being your authentic self. And as we talked about, this is it's a comparison sport, and it's very funny, ironic, whatever. I had a conversation with somebody today about, dampening the noise and the desire to look at what everybody else is doing. I know you and I are big fans of James Clear.
Yes.
And he lists his, I talked about this the other day and I called it something different. So it's not what I called it. It is actually the survivorship bias of people looking at what makes one person successful and then wanting to replicate that for themselves, but yet if like Michael Jordan's a great example.
Yes.
And books have been written about him, specials, documentaries, and how many other people have replicated his approach, but not successfully.
Right.
Because there is only one Michael Jordan.
Right.
So, and the same is true, there's only one Nicole Desmond. So, how do you deal with those pushes and pulls personally, and then we can talk about how you deal with it with your clients as well. But
personally, it's something that I still I don't want to say struggle with, but it's ever evolving. I think it's ever changing. I think when I have a negative narrative going on in my head, I can typically see that translating externally to how I'm feeling about myself. And I realized this last time I was in an improvement season or reversing out of a show is I had a really negative view of my body while I was comparing photos, and I looked pretty much, I don't want to say the same because obviously there was growth that had happened, but the same that I had in the last off season in a photo that I remember feeling really good in. So I'm like, well, what's different here? It's my mindset around what I'm looking at. It's not my actual body. And I think comparison is a thief of joy. I say this all the time to other people, and I continuously have to say it to myself because I will still, not so much when I'm competing, but more when I'm in an off season of, well, I don't look like this person, or I just like really get stuck in my head. And I think practicing self-love and self-acceptance for me is something that I've come to terms with as something I have to do all the time, or it's not just going to stick once and then it's there forever. And something that I actually recently did, I started this last month, I think. I bought a new journal just separate for this kind of like practice I wanted to start doing. And I went to ChatGPT because I think it's amazing. And I asked for I think it was a year's worth, but I think I only wrote down like 100 of them, but like 100 different prompts that had to do with journaling for self-acceptance, self-love, body image, a bunch of different topics. And I'm trying to I have started a practice of doing one per day. And it could be something like the other day, it was write a love letter to your body for all that it does for you. And there's so many things that can come up with that. Like, I used to feel shame as a little kid. I was bullied and overweight when I was younger. And there was a lot of, negative connotations with yo-yo dieting in my household, like your stereotypical, like, my mom has struggled with things like that. And so recognizing all I've put my body through and then also appreciating it for all it does for me and like the cool experiences I get to have. My legs, I walk up mountains that are 14,000 feet, and I get to see views with my eyes that are beautiful, and I get to hug the people that I love. And I think that those things
were all those elements in your love letter, by the way?
They were, yes.
Awesome.
Really putting into practice what I preach, essentially. And I think when it comes to that self-love and staying grounded within myself and trying to stay out of the comparison game, continuously practicing that for me is really important. And I noticed a dip in that mindset when I wasn't doing something like that.
I'm curious, do you monitor or manage like that kind of access of the social media side of things and all of that? Because I know for myself, and I think for a lot of the athletes I work with, that's one of those things that creeps into what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because everybody's kind of displaying their best version of themselves. And that's where sometimes people's minds can. So, I mean, what is your outlook on that?
So social media is interesting. I have never really used it in a way where I do go on and start digging and comparing myself. I think I have really good boundaries. I don't get into what I call a scroll hole a lot of the time.
I like that, scroll hole.
Yeah, scroll hole. Me and my boyfriend say that all the time. What are you doing? Scroll holing. Just sitting there.
How's that different from a rabbit hole?
Yeah, it's a scroll hole.
Okay.
So I don't get into a scroll hole a lot of times. I do, however, post a lot of content. So I'm more like on the posting side versus like the consuming side of things. And I think that really helps my mindset a lot because I'm not, looking at people's highlight reels, and I'm pretty aware of that. A conversation though, when it comes to like posting content that I've actually had with Maya before has been, I look at some people that, are content creators, and they have this schedule and they have all this beautiful content, and they are, really pushing it out there, and it's really fun for people to consume, and they're, generating a big following and all of this stuff. And, I said to her, while I do want to impact and help as many people as I can, I don't think it's genuine enough for me or to me and how I share my life to be that type of like content creator and be just pushing out things just for the sake of doing it. I personally think what's genuine for me when it comes to sharing on social media is to share my life and what I'm doing. And sometimes that's inconsistent in terms of like, sometimes I post a lot and sometimes I don't. But if people want to follow me because I'm being genuine in that way, then that's amazing. But I don't feel the need to kind of like put a video out every day or do a certain type of content because it works or because someone else is doing it. And I've talked about it in that context when it comes to utilizing social media. But I'm pretty good about boundaries around like not like, looking at people's pages and like being like, woe is me, I don't look like this person. So I don't know if that might change in the future and I might have to put some boundaries in place. But right now I don't get into a scroll hole very often.
Well, I love that you talked about the other side of it too. So, I mean, there's the consuming of it, but there's also like how you're sharing yourself on there. And that is part of your authenticity and like what feels right and authentic to you, because you do put some good content out, and I can definitely relate because I'm not one that's like I don't. It's not in me to like be constantly sharing everything. I mean, sometimes I will. Sometimes I'm mostly sharing what's going on with my athletes and then checking to see what you guys are doing and are responding to people that have messaged and things like that. But I love to hear that you kind of have taken that step back to think about like what's authentic to me, like how much do I want to share? Exactly.
Yeah. I just think that through sharing a lot of my like life experiences, because I am someone who does a lot during prep and off season, and I'm very busy and I like to travel and to, adventure, like I mentioned before, whether that's, camping or hiking or I don't even know, playing in a volleyball tournament or whatever that looks like. Like I get a lot of messages from people, from clients even. I get a lot of Colorado clients, and they are trying to do a lot of the things that I'm doing, and they want to know, how do I go spend a day on the mountain and ski all day and hit my macros? Or how do I go backpacking where I have no access to my fitness pal and track my macros and hit my protein goal? Because that's honestly the most difficult in that scenario. So I'm able to give them firsthand experience about how to do these things. And I love sharing that, because I've always said that bodybuilding to me is not my entire life. It's a big part of my life and who I am, but I have all of these other interests, and I feel like I'm a hodgepodge human is the term I like to use, where I have all these different things I like to do and identities that I kind of take on that I don't want to stop doing. And so sharing my life and the way that I keep fitness as almost a foundation and can then thrive and go do all these other things is how I like to connect with people.
That's so cool. I before we move on, because I want to hear the answer to that question. So I'm going on the mountain. I'm going to be skiing all day,
skiing.
or
backpacking.
Let's say you're backpacking. You're going
Backpacking is easier because you're packing a pack, but
you're not going to have access to internet, let's say, and so you're not going to be able to get on my fit. Like, what would you do? Because it's so interesting. Because I actually have a client right now that's in this big long camping trip. So what would be your?
So camping's a specific scenario. I feel like it depends on if they're backpacking, which means they have to carry all their food in, which is a little different than like if you're car camping somewhere. A lot of times I just have a camp stove, and I bring prepped food, and I cook my meals like I normally would at home. It's just on a camp stove, so it's pretty similar to being at home. Backpacking or on the mountain when you don't have service with my fitness pal, if you have access to be able to see the macros, I just tell myself, our clients, just do a quick ad. Like, you can block those calories off, or at least those macros off, and that'll stay in there even if you don't have service. Or guesstimate. Guessing is better than using your best judgment, that kind of thing. But when it comes to both of those scenarios with like planning my food for the day, that's the one key thing, is planning ahead. So I will, make sure I have a breakfast. I'll eat that either in the car, like I'll bring oats or something like in a container so I can eat that in the car heading to wherever I'm going. This is like specific to like skiing all day. And then I typically will bring like, a protein bar that I know can fit. I'll bring a shaker that just has a scoop of protein in it, so I can add water to it if I need to get more protein in during the day. I'll bring a meal. Like, I like to use a meal prep service, so I'll bring a meal and I'll keep that in a cooler, and I will eat it cold if I have to. So there's just certain things that people make it a little more complicated than I think it needs to be. And if you just kind of sit down and like think like, well, how could this work? How can I get, a protein and a carb source in really easily? Sometimes that might mean I'm eating 3 rice cakes and a protein shake with water, and that's my meal for the day. But I like to bring all my food, and then you can also eat on the mountain. I think a lot of restaurants on the mountain nowadays for skiing have like healthier options. So I'll get like a salad and I'll add chicken or shrimp, and I'll get the dressing on the side. And, if there's something in there I can't have, they're pretty good about like modifying things. But just bringing things that will fit and planning your day ahead of time is probably the biggest thing. Backpacking is a whole nother monster, if you will, because you have to be cognizant of like weight in your pack and things. But I like jerky because it's got sodium in there. You don't have to bring salt, things like that. Dried food. I also get like the tuna or chicken packets. They're just like basically protein. And then you can bring other like easy carb sources, like oats are great, like prepackaged oats, things like that. So there's tips and tricks that I have that are really useful. But I think the biggest thing there is planning ahead.
When you say people make it more complicated, to me, that just is a statement that seems like a bigger task than what it can be or does or needs to be. And part of what you describe, and I also think it's a practice, right?
It is.
The first time you do it, it's not going to be perfect.
Yeah.
You're going to learn things every time. And I know a lot of people, I get this from a lot of athletes, is that, I'm scared to travel. I'm scared to travel. And it's like, well, when you first went in the gym and you started executing movements, were you a little scared of that too?
Yeah.
And you were, and you got better at it the more you did it. And the best way to get better at things is to do it.
Yeah.
So travel, and you might not be perfect the first time you do it, but you take those lessons, you apply it to the next time, and the next time, and the next time. And that I think has been your practice. Like these skills that you just described, you didn't have those day one.
I think I've always been a very type A planner, so I think I
The planning
really,
part,
really quickly figured it out. But I listened to the episode you guys did on traveling, and I loved how you referenced traveling as a skill, because that's exactly what it is. Like, you learn what works for you. And I learned something new last year. I was like, oh, I could cook oats on the airplane if I ask for hot water. And that's changed how I travel in the mornings when I have an early flight. This morning I flew in and I, asked for hot water at the Starbucks at the airport and made my normal breakfast at the airport. And I think you just pick up tips and easy things as you go, and you learn how to make it work for you. And I love this saying that I heard this once, where it was, you pack your clothes and you pack your toiletries for your trip. Why is it so weird to pack your food?
Yeah.
Like, it's not. And I think that there might be certain nuances to it, like you can't bring ice packs through security, or you can't bring peanut butter as a liquid, that kind of stuff. But for the most part, I think if you just keep it really simple, it can be really simple. It doesn't have to be super complicated.
Yeah. And I think planning being the key there. And you are a great, great planner. And I think the other thing I would add is learn and apply.
Yes.
So learn what you experience on that particular trip and then apply that the next time. And for you being a journaler, I'm betting that you journal some of those lessons and care. Am I right about that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think too is being solution oriented.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, that depending on the mental state and the approach to things, like I'll ask somebody a question, oh, can't do that, as opposed to, how could I do that?
Right.
If there was a way, what would it be? And then
Right.
starting to kind of explore from there. And I see that aspect in you, and and you're an explorer. You've said that, you're an adventurer.
Yeah.
So that's approaching everything in life that way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I love to work with clients when they're going to travel for the first time and say, like, how can we approach this? There's a couple different options if you want to track your food, if you don't want to track your food, if you're going on vacation. Obviously, there's some nuances there, but how can we prepare you to be ready to travel again? And then they come back from the trip and they're like, well, I learned, X, Y, and Z, and I know what I'm going to do better next time. And it's like, yep, that's exactly kind of how I want to teach people how to do things themselves and figure it out themselves, while also helping them. I really dislike when clients are like, well, I'm traveling this week and I didn't know what to do, so I don't have anything with me, and I don't have this, and I don't have my food, and I don't have my scale. And I get a little frustrated because I'm here to support you and help you figure out a plan on how to do that. So my response typically will be, next time you travel, let's work together before you leave to figure out a plan on how you want to approach traveling. Whether that's you don't want to track, totally fine. We can prepare for that. Or you want to figure out a way to stay on track. Like, I have so much experience doing this over the last 10 years. I've gone to bachelorette parties. I've gone skiing, camping, hiking, vacations. I was in Hawaii in peak week last year, and I hit all my protocol. I ate all my food. I did all the things. And I really think that it's a learning, it's a skill, but it's also asking for support where you need it.
That's very true. That's very true. Use your resources.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what really, as coaches, that's what we're here for. So, and man, there's so many resources. And I love that you talked about all those different things. And I know a lot of times people go, oh, I'm in prep, or even when they're in a growth mode, they're like, I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything.
Yeah.
I gotta be, and they feel so stuck. And then they stop having fun and not even wanting to do it anymore, because life starts to feel very restrictive. So it's cool to hear you talk about all the adventures and how you like to live your life. And that doesn't keep you from also working towards your goal of competing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that you touched on the restrictive feeling, because I've always said to myself and even to clients, like, I want fitness to feel freeing and not restrictive. And like, you can still go live your life and not feel held back by it, because honestly, it's something that should be, more freeing than anything, to feel like you have these systems and foundations in place that you can go and live your life and know you can come back to something that is your default essentially, and you'll be okay regardless of what you did, for those 2 days.
Absolutely.
So I don't think we got too far off the topic of authenticity.
A little bit,
but no, I'm glad we took that little. I don't think that was a squirrel hole. I just think that was a little
Squirrel hole. Scroll hole.
What do they call those? The roundabouts. It's a little roundabout. We're just on the little roundabout. So let's talk in the remaining time. I want to make sure we're talking about authenticity in relationships and authenticity in your career.
Yeah.
So pick one of those two and talk about the challenges there, and then we'll go from that.
Yeah, I think relationships has been a huge thing for me. I think relationships are one of the biggest pieces of life in general. And I think we learn the most about ourselves in the right relationships and even in the wrong ones, because they hold up a mirror to who you are and how you are and what you want and what you don't want. And I think I've learned a lot about myself in the last 7 years through good and bad relationships and what I want in life and what I don't want in life.
I will. So Jami and I both had 2 marriages before our final marriage, which is each other. And I know it's my final marriage.
There were practice runs.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good way to put it.
And I know it's my final marriage because she's told me that if I ever
There's only one way out of this relationship.
Which I'm comfortable with because that's what I want. And I always say this about divorce is that divorce is very painful. Yeah. And it's not a ride that I would ever buy a ticket to, but you will learn more about yourself. And I don't necessarily know, other than the legal part of divorce, there's really not that much difference between that and a long-term relationship that you break from. The only thing that's different is there's a piece of paper that says you're divorced.
Right.
But the emotional impact and the impacts on your authenticity as well, since that's our topic, can be tremendous.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when I got out of the relationship I got out of in 2017, that to me catapulted me into, like I mentioned before, figuring out who I am. And I've been asked this question before, like, who is the person that's had the biggest impact on your life? And my answer has been that boyfriend, even though it was a really bad relationship. He essentially catapulted me into bodybuilding, into finding who I am. And I don't think I'd be where I am today if I hadn't been pushed into that journey in that way. And learning about myself those like following years and figuring out who I am and how I want to show up in relationship and the type of partner that I want to be and also the type of partner that I not only want but need, I was then able to kind of find that partner and that relationship. And then this current relationship I'm in has also taught me so much about who I am and what I want and what I need. And whether that's in bodybuilding or just in life in general, it's held up the mirror for me to be able to look at myself and look at my own things I need to work on, and improve myself, evolve and grow in a positive way. I think people get really hung up on, your partner shouldn't want to change you. And it's like, no, but you should want to grow for your partner. And I think I've always been I love self-growth. I love improving myself. So if someone who I care and love about is giving me feedback in some kind of way, and, I can relate this to a lot of things, but prep's a really prevalent one for me. Like in prep, I can get really snappy. And so it was something that I really wanted to work on in an off season to make sure that I wasn't snapping at my partner, not only in prep, but also just in general. And when your partner can tell you that feedback and give you that in confidence, like, if you love them, you should trust what they're saying. And I think that, it's not about changing, it's about growing together.
I got chills when you were saying that because basically what I'm hearing you say is that authenticity isn't about this is who I am and this is it. Mm-hmm. Don't move me. This is it. I'm standing my ground. I mean, there may be an aspect of that at times, but what you're saying is authenticity is also being willing to listen to the people you care about in your life and then look back at yourself and see, does that resonate? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a question that comes up in relationships that I have is like, do you want to show up in the way that you're showing up right now? Or is this just something that, is happening because of your ego or because of, a pattern or something? And when you frame it that way, where it's like, yes, you might be acting this way or showing up this way, but is that really how you want to be? And if the answer is no, then maybe you should listen to the feedback you're getting and work on it, whatever that looks like for you. And that's going to look different for everyone.
And I think, let's bridge over into the career world because I do, my last years in corporate America, with diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, authenticity became a huge movement. And I think it still is a huge movement. But I also think that within that construct of authenticity in the workplace, a lot of people say, well, I can't be my authentic self. And I said, well, what does that look like?
Yeah.
And what they described was something that okay, you're being authentic, but you're alienating everybody around you.
Right.
Is that the outcome that you want? Is your authenticity more important to you than your relationships? And I don't think that that's that's not a binary question. It's not a yes or no. It's a how do you balance those things? So, and I think, one of the other struggles that people face in the workplace is they'll see other people, and going back to the comparison aspect in bodybuilding, because as we all agree, bodybuilding is not life, but it can make your life better.
Absolutely.
That analogy of looking at other people progressing that may not have your skill set, may not be as talented as you, but they're progressing and you're not.
Yeah.
And so you've got to kind of ask that question of yourself is, what is my authentic self, and how do I balance that against the needs in the workplace and the relationships that I want to do? And I love the way that you said it, Nicole, which I think is just perfect, which is this the way I want to show up?
Right. Yeah. And I think when I think about like my corporate career and everything, I have been in a lot of positions before where I take on a lot and I don't think that it's recognized or valued in the way that it should be. And in the past, I've let that impact how I show up. And
I'm just going to say amen to that.
What's that? Yeah.
I'm just going to say amen to that because I live that life anyway. But
I think it tends to happen to a lot of people when they're entering the workforce. You say yes to a lot. You don't have a lot of boundaries. You don't feel like you can set those boundaries because you don't feel...
You're wanting to prove yourself.
You're wanting to prove yourself. You don't feel secure. Everyone feels like an elder, like they know more than you. And I think as I've gotten older in my career, now in my 30s, I've just finding myself and then bringing that to the workplace where it's like, I know I'm bringing value. I know what I'm worth, and I know I do really good work. And I'm also not afraid to set boundaries with colleagues when it comes to, my time and things like that. And I look at my colleagues more as peers now than I do as like elders and things like that, which I think is just a shift that might happen as you age and, you get more ingrained into the workforce or in whatever your career path is. But I think what's really interesting is that authenticity can also mean that you have maybe not a different persona, but I do think I stand more in like my masculine energy in my career than anything, because I feel like as a female in the workforce, like you kind of have to bring those characteristics to life, if you will. Like it is more like taking charge, leading, rigidity, scheduling, those kinds of things are more of like not like, man versus woman thing, but a masculine energy versus, in my relationship, I want to kind of be like softer and more like emotional and feelings and stuff like that. That doesn't mean there's not a place for that in the workplace, but I think being my authentic self in the workplace means, one, I can still joke and be my outgoing self, but they don't need to see every single side of me.
Right.
But that doesn't mean I'm being inauthentic. I think it's just there's a time and a place for everything, and there's different versions of you that show up in different ways in different areas of your life.
I'm just going to give you an A on that answer.
A plus.
I love that.
A
That was so well put. I'm sorry.
I truly couldn't have said it better. And I think that's exactly what you're referring to is where, people like, oh, my authentic self is wearing a clown suit. And so, maybe that's not so appropriate for the workspace. Maybe you'd wear your clown suit when you're, going to the park in the evenings or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm being silly, but I mean, really that's kind of what you're talking about is that, we all have different facets of ourselves. And then what parts of myself am I bringing more to each of these different situations? What best serves the...
Yeah. And it's something that I've really thought a lot about, even with my career and with bodybuilding. Both of those things for me are very much so like this masculine energy. They are very, rigid, structured. You have certain tasks to complete, and then trying to then turn that off essentially, or then soften into a feminine energy or be more just, emotional and feel the feelings, which I do sometimes have a hard time with, and be a partner to a person that doesn't need that, leader energy. It's a little bit of finding a balance, but I think all those parts of me are important. But it is trying to figure out how to essentially find the wave from one to the other.
Because it's like a lava lamp.
Yes.
You've got to mold and adjust.
Do people still know what those are?
They probably don't. Okay.
I loved lava lamps. Oh my God.
In fact, they made a comeback. But it's as a lawyer, as a trial lawyer, as a military leader, as commander and leader of soldiers, there is always that first rule of leadership, which is be yourself.
Yes.
Be your authentic self. And you've got to balance that with the what is the outcome that I want here? And is my authentic self contributing to that?
Yeah.
Or am I, and this is the ego part of it, or am I just being my authentic self to service my ego?
Yeah.
Am I serving my outcome, or am I serving my ego? And I think that's a hard question to answer from time to time, because it's such a complex scenario in any given situation. If you're talking with your boss, it might be different than if you're talking with a colleague. If you're talking with somebody who reports to your spouse, that absolutely is like. So we ask the question: do you want to be right, or do you want to be effective? And that question has served me so well, and can really has driven introspection in me. But like, it's so easy to lose yourself, but at the same time, it's like, am I really losing myself, or am I prioritizing what is the bigger purpose or the bigger thing in this scenario?
Yeah. Priorities is a huge thing. But I like what you just said about, am I right, or am I trying to be effective, whatever that saying.
Do you want to be right, or do you want to be effective?
Right. Because I think about when it comes to even like relationships and partnership, like huge thing I've learned in therapy and just years of being in a relationship is it's not you against your partner, it's you guys against the problem. And I think if you approach...
Wait, say that one more time, because
that's powerful.
That's a mic drop. That's a mic drop moment.
It's not
Seriously.
You against your partner, it's you two against the problem. So I think a lot of, not all relationships need more communication. They need more of the right communication, whether that's, personal relationships or even with like, colleagues or whatever you want to call it. But if you went into a work scenario and you were, you had an issue with the company and you looked at your teammate and you're like, well, this is your fault. Like, and he was blaming you, like, no, you're not going to get anywhere. Like, how do you create a solution together to tackle the problem? And then if you can take that, idea into your personal relationship when it comes to like a partnership, like a boyfriend, a girlfriend or whatever, and you can say like, we have this thing that we're dealing with, but it's not you and me against each other. It's we have a problem that we need to figure out a solution together. And I think it's just, I've recognized in my own relationship when we are fighting against each other, like one of us is trying to be right and we don't get anywhere. It doesn't work. And so when you can both step back and say like, okay, this is the problem. How can we identify how we can both better show up for each other to fix this problem or whatever that might be? I think that's just, way more effective.
I do want to pause you on one thing, because you hit on something that I also think is so important, is that what is the problem that we are solving here?
Right.
And I think so many people just think of a problem as a problem. And it's like, okay, wait, can we agree on what we're solving? Is it that we don't have groceries because I didn't go shopping?
Right.
Or is there another thing here that we need to talk about, that's the division of labor, or the consideration of each other, that's broader than just there's no bologna in the refrigerator?
Right. And I think a
Sorry,
lot of
that bologna's horrible. Sorry, it was the only thing that came to mind.
And we eat lots of bologna in the bodybuilding world.
Oh yeah.
I think
I've had bologna before.
I think that a lot of times it's more about people's emotions and feelings around what happened, not actually the action itself or the event itself. So validating somebody and what they're feeling is super huge, and giving empathy. And I, practice that with all of my clients, whether or not I'm like, this is crazy what's happening, but yep, I can understand being stressed and why you might be stressed with that, to kind of bring it full circle. But, giving that empathy to anyone who is, giving you an emotion that they're feeling. It's not about saying, I understand how you got to that emotion. It's saying, I understand that you're stressed, and stress it sucks to feel that way. And you can understand the underlying feeling without necessarily understanding, the action or event that caused it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm thinking about just how we're talking about authenticity and talking about, looking at, and I love the example Greg gave, you didn't go to the grocery store, whatever the thing is, whereas truly being authentic is digging deeper. Which is what you're saying is like, why am I feeling, this way when you didn't go to the grocery store?
Yeah.
Do I feel like maybe you don't love me, or you don't care, or
you don't consider me as a big one? Yeah.
Yeah. So I do think like that's a lot of what I hear you saying is like that kind of that peeling back of the onion.
Yes.
To find more of the root of who am I? Why am I responding this way? And then out of that, there may be a change in response because,
Exactly.
you know, there may be some security that's built because a conversation was able to be had. Oh, you do actually care about me. And,
Yeah.
you know, you had something else going on. And, you know, so I do feel like that's something we make an effort to practice, and it's not always the easiest thing to do, but I do, you know, I know you've talked a lot about like therapy and things like that. And a lot of times that does help get those tools to help pull back the onion, as we've done that a bit.
Pull back the onion. Pull back the curtain or peel back the onion. It's all right. We're mixing metaphors.
Or eat bologna, you know.
Or eat bologna.
Eat bologna.
I wrote this down when Jami was just talking about
P-O-L-O-G-N-A.
is that that's funny. That brings back a lot of memories. Anyway, I wrote down that, you know, just as a coach, it's rare. And one of the, I'm going to tell you something about you. If I was going to be coached by somebody, I would want to be coached by you. And the reason for that is because I just think you're so broad. You understand, you are a holistic coach. You're not just looking at any one thing, you're looking at everything.
Yeah.
And I think as a coach, detaching your ego, so many coaches focus on the problem of you're not doing what I'm telling you to do, which is not the problem. The problem is I have not found the right solution that will work for you.
Yeah.
And so let's keep digging. And am I overstating that that's your approach?
No, that absolutely is my approach. And I think I've even applied this with myself. Just, you know, if something's not working for me, I'm like, well, how else could I be doing this to make it work for me? And then I take that experience that I have and I try to apply it to clients. And I have a couple clients going through reversing for the first time, and they're both struggling in ways that I anticipated because, you know, they thought, oh, I've got this down pat, right? And then they kind of get into the weeds of it, and they're having trouble tracking. They're having all these things. And I proposed this to a client where I said, do you feel comfortable maybe doing intuitive eating? You're obviously having a lot of stress from tracking. Maybe we move into this and you just have some structure around it. Like we eat 4 meals a day. We make sure we have protein, a carb, and a fiber source in each meal, and then a fat source in 2 of the other meals. But then you eat those 4 meals a day and you don't track them. Like we can maybe backtrack to just make sure we're okay. But ultimately it's this, I can tell it's the stress of tracking that's causing her a lot of, you know, turmoil. And then she's overshooting her macros, and then she feels shame and guilt. And so it's just this spiral that she can't seem to get out of. And I know for me, I get that way after a prep. So I'm proposing something that I might not normally with a new client who is newer to reversing and competing, but I feel like it might be a strategy that could help her take the stress off of, you know, this one hyper fixation of I'm not hitting my macros and I'm failing. So I wanted to propose that to her. And I think there's just a lot of things I've had in the last, you know, 7-8 years of competing with my experience and different ways of reversing, different ways of dieting, where I can look at someone and say, okay, I've gone through this, or I've experienced something similar to this, and this is kind of what worked for me. Maybe this would work for you. And so I think that I do like to look at it from a perspective of like, sometimes it's, no, we should stick to the protocol. And sometimes it's like, maybe there really is a different approach to take.
I love that. I love that. So this conversation could go on all day,
It
I
could,
feel.
yeah.
And we do need to wrap it up. So let's do let's see. Let's do something before we do your checkout word. I'll give you a chance to kind of stew on that. Tell people how to connect with you.
Yes. You can connect with me, I guess, through social media. So I'm Coley Cole on Instagram, which is my nickname from my family growing up.
Coley.
Coliey.
Okay.
Cole. So fun story, just a little bit about that. Growing up, until I was about 3, my parents and family called me Nikki. And then I was at like an after school or preschool like caregiver who watched kids in her home, and she got a little boy named Nikki. And so I came home one day and said to my parents at 3 years old, I said, Nikki is a boy's name. That's not my name anymore. Call me Coley. And they're the only people, most of my immediate family, that call me that. And then everyone who knows me from social media just because of that. But otherwise, like nobody else in my life calls me Coley. So it's kind of interesting. But Coley Cole on Instagram, I would say that's the main way to connect with me. You can also find me on the FitBody Fusion site. My roster is open as a coach, so I'm open to taking on new clients as well.
And people would be very well kept with you at the helm.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the checkout word?
Proud.
Wow. I love that. I love that. We went from nervous, excited to
Yeah,
proud.
to proud, yeah.
You did so well,
Big
Nicole.
jump.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And I think we're going to have another conversation with you in another episode.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about learning to lose, which is oh my God, I got chills just thinking about that
You
topic
just
and
wait.
getting into that. So, babe, do you have anything else?
No, I was great. And I loved that story. I didn't know that story. That was really cute.
So remember what we say at the end, which is be good to yourself.
Be good to each other.
And be safe. Like, comment, subscribe, and review. I still think that's the same as commenting, but anyway.
It's not.
It's not.
Okay, it's not? Okay, well, that's me. All right.
Yeah.
I don't, that InstaFace.
But he also eats bologna, so
Facebook,
there's that.
Facegram, all that stuff. Interweb,
Facegram.
yes, all. Facegram. Yeah, Facegram.
Facegram.
Yeah, Facegram is the new one. All right, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to FitBody Lifestyle. We hope today's episode has left you feeling motivated and equipped to tackle your fitness goals, business challenges, and the daily dance of life. Remember to value progress over perfection. Life's tough enough alone. Find the chosen family around you to help you along the way.
If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite streaming platform. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at FitBody Fusion.